Hello everyone. Welcome to Realist Quill. Like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from and what time are you watching now? When I accepted the night shift nursing position at St. Augustine Medical Center, the HR director never mentioned the quarantine ward on sub-level 3. No one did. Not during orientation, not during my department tour, not even during my first month of shadowing another nurse. The first I heard about it was from Marco, one of the orderlies who'd worked at St. Augustine for nearly 20 years. We were sharing a cigarette break outside the ambulance bay at 2 a.m., the witching hour of hospital shifts when even the most hardened medical professionals start seeing things in the shadows. Been down to sub-3 yet? He asked casually, exhaling smoke that curled like ghostly fingers in the cold night air. I frowned. Sub-3? I thought the basement only had 2 levels. Marco's expression changed subtly. Officially, yeah. He crushed his cigarette under his shoe. But there's another level below the morgue, accessible only by service elevator, with special clearance. What's down there? I asked, thinking it must be storage or perhaps some outdated facility they didn't use anymore. Quarantine ward, Marco said, his voice dropping. Been there since the hospital was built in the Cold War era stuff, you know, for containing potential outbreaks. I laughed. Are you trying to scare the new nurse? Because it's working. Marco didn't smile back. You think a hospital this size in a city this populated doesn't have contingency plans for infectious disease outbreaks? Where do you think they'd put patient 0 if something truly dangerous walked through those doors? A chill that had nothing to do with the night air crept down my spine. So it's just empty down there, waiting? His eyes met mine, and there was something in them I couldn't quite read. I didn't say it was empty. The conversation haunted me for the rest of my shift. I tried to dismiss it as the kind of ghost story veteran staff tell newcomers. Every workplace has them. But something about Marco's expression, the flatness in his voice when he said I didn't say it was empty, it stuck with me. 3 nights later, I was at the central nurses station when Dr. Patel, one of the emergency department physicians, approached me with an unusual request. Nurse Collins, she said, her voice low despite the empty hallway. I need a favor. We're short-staffed tonight, and I need someone to deliver medication to a patient in special containment. My heart skipped. Special containment? Dr. Patel nodded, sliding a keycard across the counter. Sub-level 3. The patient's chart is in the system under ID number SL301. Not a name. The medication is already prepared in the secure dispensary. You just need to deliver it and observe administration. I don't have clearance for that area, I said, though my fingers were already reaching for the keycard. You do now, Dr. Patel replied. Temporary. Just for tonight. The regular nurse called in sick, and everyone else is swamped with the bus accident victims. I should have asked more questions. Should have wondered why, in a hospital with over 200 staff members, I was being chosen for this task. Instead, I took the keycard, slipped it into my pocket, and nodded. What's wrong with the patient? I finally thought to ask as Dr. Patel was turning to leave. She paused. Advanced neurodegenerative condition. Experimental treatment protocol. Her pager beeped, and she glanced at it. I have to go. The dispensary will have the full instructions. Just follow them exactly. The service elevator was located in a back corridor near the morgue, unmarked except for a small sign that read authorized personnel only. The keycard Dr. Patel had given me unlocked both the door to the corridor and the elevator itself. Inside, beneath the usual array of floor buttons, was another, unmarked button that I'd never noticed before. I inserted the keycard into a slot beside it, and the button illuminated. As the elevator descended, I tried to calm my racing heart by focusing on the facts. This was still a hospital. I was still a nurse. This was just another patient who needed care. The setting might be unusual, but the job was the same. The elevator doors opened directly into what looked like an airlock. A small room with another door opposite, this one made of heavy metal with a small window. A wall-mounted intercom system stood to the right, alongside a keypad and another card reader. Hello? I called out, unsure of the protocol. A crackling voice responded through the intercom. Identify yourself and state your purpose. Nurse Sarah Collins, I answered. Dr. Patel sent me to deliver medication to patient SL301. Silence. Then, scan your temporary clearance and enter the code. I did as instructed, swiping the card and entering the numbers. The heavy door unlocked with a hiss of pressurized air. As it swung open, cold air rushed out, carrying that distinct hospital smell, antiseptic with undertones of sickness. But there was something else beneath it, something earthy and wrong. The quarantine ward was smaller than I'd imagined. A central monitoring station faced 6 containment rooms, 3 on each side of a wide corridor. Unlike the regular patient rooms upstairs, these had heavy doors with small windows reinforced with wire mesh. Each room had a digital display showing vital signs and what looked like atmospheric readings. A single nurse sat at the monitoring station. An older woman with steel-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun. She looked up as I entered, her expression unreadable. "You're the temporary?" she asked, her voice matching the one from the intercom. I nodded, holding up the medication bag from the dispensary. "For SL301. "I'm Nurse Hargrove," she said, standing. "I've been on shift for 16 hours. You're a godsend." She looked exhausted, dark circles prominent under her eyes. 16 hours? That's against regulation, I said. A humorless smile crossed her face. "Regular rules don't apply down here, honey. Nothing does." She gestured to the containment rooms. "We've only got 1 patient at the moment. SL301. Been here about 3 weeks. What's wrong with them?" I asked, setting the medication bag on the counter. Nurse Hargrove's expression tightened. "That's above your clearance. All you need to know is in the dispensary instructions. You're just here to administer the meds and observe for 30 minutes after. I'll be in the break room if there's an emergency." She pointed to a door at the far end of the corridor. "Don't try to engage the patient in conversation. Don't respond if they speak to you. Just do your job and get out." She showed me how to operate the containment room's entry system. Another airlock-style setup. And then left for the break room, seemingly eager to put distance between herself and patient SL3. The digital display showed normal vital signs. Heart rate 72, blood pressure 118/76. Oxygen saturation 98%. But the temperature reading was strange, 93. Hypothermic. Yet the atmospheric controls showed the room was kept at a warm. Through the small window I could see a figure lying in a hospital bed. The room was dimly lit, but I could make out the outline of someone covered by a blanket, facing away from the door. I followed the entry protocol, waiting for the outer door to seal before the inner door would open. The medication bag contained a syringe of cloudy liquid labeled simply Protocol X42, along with detailed administration instructions. IV push, followed by a saline flush. Standard procedure, even if the medication itself was anything. As the inner door opened, that earthy smell intensified, like wet soil and decomposing leaves, with an underlying scent that reminded me of the morgue. The patient didn't move as I entered, their backs still toward me, covered up to their shoulders with a standard-issue hospital blanket. "Hello," I said, despite Nurse Hargrove's warning not to engage. "I'm Nurse Collins. I'm here to administer your evening medication." Slowly the figure turned. I almost dropped the syringe. The patient, a man in his 40s from what I could tell, had skin the color of a days-old bruise, mottled purple and gray. His eyes were clouded, the whites yellowed and threaded with burst blood vessels. Cracked lips pulled back from his teeth in what might have been an attempt at a smile. "New face," he rasped, his voice like sandpaper on stone. "They usually send Hargrove." I swallowed hard, forcing myself into clinical mode. This was just a patient with a severe medical condition. Nothing more. "Dr. Patel sent me," I said, approaching the bed. "I need to administer this medication intravenously. May I see your arm, please?" He extended his arm from beneath the blanket. The skin was covered in a network of black veins, visible beneath the sickly gray surface. His movements were stiff, jerky, as if his joints weren't working properly. I noticed he was restrained. Leather cuffs around his wrists attached to long chains that allowed limited movement, but kept him secured to the bed. Standard protocol for combative patients. But something told me there was more to it in this case. As I prepared the injection site, I couldn't help but ask, "Does it hurt? Your condition, I mean." His clouded eyes fixed on mine. Not anymore. The pain stopped when the hunger began. A chill ran through me. Hunger for living things, he said matter-of-factly. Warm things. The doctors say it's a symptom, part of the disease. His tongue, discolored and swollen, darted out to wet his cracked lips. "What do you think, Nurse Collins?" I focused on inserting the IV catheter, disturbed that he'd remembered my name after hearing it just once. "I think I should administer your medication now." As the needle pierced his skin, I noticed something alarming. He didn't bleed. The puncture remained dry, as if his veins contained no fluid. Yet when I connected the syringe and began to push the medication, the line accepted it without resistance. "Do you know what they're giving me?" he asked as I worked. I shook my head. "It's an experimental treatment. That's all I know." He made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Experiment? Yes, they're trying to keep me from becoming what I'm becoming." His eyes never left my face. "It won't work. Nothing works. The change is inevitable." "What change?" The question slipped out before I could stop myself. He smiled again, wider this time, revealing teeth that seemed too numerous, too sharp. "You know about rabies, Nurse Collins, how it makes animals aggressive, makes them bite, spread the infection." He leaned closer, the restraints creaking. "This is like that, but worse. It doesn't kill you, it changes you, makes you hungry, makes you want to spread it." I finished administering the medication and quickly disconnected the syringe, backing away a step. "I'm required to observe you for 30 minutes after administration to make sure I don't die." Another of those terrible laughs. Too late for that. My professional demeanor was slipping. This man, this patient, was saying things that couldn't possibly be true. Yet the evidence of severe disease was right before my eyes. "What happened to you?" I asked, no longer caring about Nurse Hargrove's instructions not to engage. "I was a microbiologist," he said, settling back against his pillows. "CDC. We were investigating a potential outbreak in Brazil. Something new, something that made people..." His breathing was labored, chest rising and falling in an uneven rhythm. "I was careful. We all were. Hazmat protocols. But sometimes careful isn't enough." "You're patient zero," I whispered. Understanding dawning. "The first case in the country." He nodded slowly. "First known case, won't be the last." "But they have you contained," I said. "You're in quarantine. The infection can't spread." "Unless I got out," he replied. "Unless someone else is already out there, changing, hungry." His clouded eyes seemed to clear momentarily. A flash of the man he once was coming through. "The incubation period is long. 2 weeks before symptoms show. I infected my wife before I knew I was sick. She infected others before they took her. My blood ran cold. Where is she now?" "Officially, isolation at the CDC headquarters in Atlanta." His expression darkened. "Unofficial, I don't know. No one will tell me. But I heard the orderlies talking. There have been cases in 3 states now." "That's not possible," I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I remembered news reports from the past month. Mysterious attacks, people exhibiting extreme violent behavior, attributed to a new street drug. Isolated incidents, or so they said. "The medication," he continued. "It slows the progression, keeps us docile, manageable. But it doesn't cure." He gestured to his mottled skin. "Nothing can reverse this." The monitor above his bed beeped, showing a drop in his already low body temperature. The medication was taking effect, seeming to suppress something in his system. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because someone needs to know. Someone needs to spread the truth instead of the disease." His speech was slowing. "The medication inducing a state like sedation. They won't be able to contain it. Too many variables. Too many already infected." "If that's true," I said, "why haven't we seen more cases? More people like you?" His eyes were drooping now, but his words remained clear. "The first stage looks like flu. Second stage, psychosis, violence. By the third stage, when the skin changes, the hunger becomes overwhelming. Most don't make it to a hospital. They're shot by police, or they run into the woods, the sewers, anywhere dark." The implications were horrifying. If he was telling the truth, if this wasn't just the delusion of a very sick man, then a potentially civilization-ending epidemic was in its early stages. "Why are you here, and not at the CDC?" I asked. "Why a regular hospital?" "Regular," he laughed weakly. "Nothing regular about sub-level 3. Government facility, disguised as a hospital ward. They're studying us, learning how it progresses, how to fight it." His eyes closed, "or how to use it." The medication had fully taken effect now. He would sleep for hours according to the instruction. I completed my observations, noting his vital signs and reactions in the chart, then prepared to leave. As I reached the inner door of the airlock, his voice called out once more, so faint I almost didn't hear it. "Check my wife's house," he whispered. "Vol.2. See what's in the basement. Then you'll believe." I left the containment room, the airlock hissing behind me. Nurse Hargrove was back at the monitoring station, looking marginally more rested. "All done?" she asked without looking up. "Yes," I replied. "He's sleeping now." "Good. That's all they want from us. Keep him medicated. Keep him contained. Keep him secret." She finally looked at me, her eyes hard. "Whatever he told you, forget it. These patients, they're delusional. It's part of their condition." I nodded. But internally, I was already planning to drive by Vol.2 Oakwood Drive on my way home. Not to go inside. I wasn't that foolish. But just to see if the house existed. If it did, I'd call the CDC, report what the patient had told me. "Your shift is over," Nurse Hargrove said. "I'll take it from here. Dr. Patel might ask you to come back tomorrow night. Say no." "Why?" Her expression softened just slightly. "Because once you've been down here too many times, they don't let you work anywhere else. Security risk." She turned back to her monitors. "Get out while you can, Collins. This isn't a place for someone with a conscience." The elevator ride back to the main hospital felt like returning from another world. The bright lights, the sounds of normal hospital activity. It all seemed surreal after the quiet horror of sub-level 3. I changed out of my scrubs and signed out for the night, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to dismiss everything I'd seen and heard as the ramblings of a very sick man, but I couldn't shake the image of his mottled skin, those clouded eyes, the way he spoke about hunger. Oakwood Drive was only a few miles from the hospital, in a quiet suburban neighborhood. I found Vol.2 easily, a modest 2-story house with a well-maintained lawn. It looked perfectly normal, no police tape, no signs of disturbance. Just a dark house at 7 a.m., its occupants perhaps still sleeping. Except according to patient SL301, the occupant was in quarantine at the CDC. I parked across the street, uncertain what I was even doing there. What was I hoping to see? What did I expect to find? After a few minutes of internal debate, I decided this was foolish and started my car to leave. That's when I noticed movement at the side of the house. A figure emerged from what must have been a basement entrance, partially concealed by shrubbery. Even from across the street, I could see it moved wrong. Jerky, uncoordinated steps, like someone relearning how to walk. The figure paused, its head turning in a mechanical sweep, like a security camera. Though it was too far away to see clearly, I had the distinct impression it was sniffing the air. Then it looked directly at my car. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I drove away, hands shaking on the steering wheel. 3 blocks from the house, I pulled over and called 911, reporting suspicious activity at the address. I didn't mention patient SL301 or anything about quarantine or disease, just a suspicious person emerging from what looked like a basement entrance. When I got home, I took the hottest shower I could stand, as if I could wash away the memory of sub-level 3. Then I collapsed into bed, exhaustion finally overcoming my racing thought. My phone woke me 4 hours later. It was Dr. Patel. "Nurse Collins," she said without greeting. "I understand you visited Oakwood Drive this morning." My blood ran cold. "How did you? Your temporary clearance badge has a tracker," she interrupted. "Standard protocol for anyone who visits sub-level 3. I need you to come in immediately. My shift doesn't start until." "This isn't about your shift. This is about national security." I sat up, fully awake now. "Are you saying it's true, what the patient told me?" Silence on the line. "Then I'm saying that you've been exposed to classified information, and we need to debrief you. A car is already on its way to your apartment, and if I refuse, that would be unwise," Dr. Patel said, her voice cold. "Very unwise indeed." Through my bedroom window I could see a black SUV pulling up outside my apartment building. 2 men in suits emerged, looking up at my window. "They're already here," I said. "Good, go with them. They'll bring you to me." Dr. Patel's voice softened slightly. "Sarah, listen to me. What's happening is bigger than you understand. Cooperation is your only option now." The line went dead. A moment later, my buzzer rang. I had a choice to make. Go with these men, return to the hospital, and learn the truth about patient SL301 and whatever was happening at 1422 Oakwood Drive. Or run, though, where I could go that they couldn't find me. I had no idea. As I buzzed them in, I made a quick decision. I grabbed my phone and sent a text to my sister in Chicago. "If you don't hear from me in 24 hours, call the CDC. Ask about patient SL301 at St. Augustine Medical Center." Then I deleted the message from my sent folder and went to meet the men in suits. The SUV had darkened windows and no identifying marks. Neither man spoke as we drove, not to me or each other. We didn't go to the hospital's main entrance, but instead to a loading dock I'd never used before. Patel was waiting, along with a man in military uniform, a colonel based on the insignia. "Nurse Collins," Dr. Patel greeted me. "This is Colonel Wheeler. He has some questions for you." The colonel nodded briskly. "Let's talk inside." They led me through a series of corridors I'd never seen before, eventually arriving at what looked like a conference room. No windows, 1 door, a table with several chairs. A recording device sat in the center of the table. "Sit," Colonel Wheeler instructed. I complied, my mind racing. What had I gotten myself into? "Nurse Collins," he began, after starting the recorder, "you were assigned to administer medication to patient SL301 last night. During this time, the patient revealed classified information about his condition and its implications. Is that correct?" I nodded, then realized he wanted a verbal response for the recording. "Yes. And this morning you visited an address connected to the patient. Why?" I saw no point in lying. "He told me to check his wife's house, said there was something in the basement that would make me believe his story." "And did you enter the premises?" "No, I observed from my car. I saw someone or something come out of what looked like a basement entrance. It moved strangely." Colonel Wheeler exchanged a glance with Dr. Patel. "And then I left, called 911 to report suspicious activity, but didn't mention anything about the patient or what he told me. Then I went home." The colonel leaned forward. "Nurse Collins, what you've been exposed to is a matter of national security. The condition affecting patient SL301 is a highly infectious agent that causes neurological deterioration, leading to violent behavior and physiological changes. A zombie virus, I said flatly. Colonel Wheeler's expression tightened. That term is both inaccurate and unhelpful. We refer to it as pathogen. It's a prion disease with properties we've never seen before. He paused. You understand that this information cannot leave this room. What happens now? I asked. Am I in quarantine too? Have I been exposed? The pathogen requires direct fluid transfer, blood, saliva. You're not infected. He studied me for a moment. But you are compromised. You've seen things you shouldn't have seen. Heard things you shouldn't have heard. So what? You're going to kill me. I regretted the words as soon as they left my mouth. To my surprise, the colonel laughed. No, Nurse Collins, we're going to offer you a job. Dr. Patel spoke up for the first time since entering the room. We need medical personnel who can work with these patients. People who can follow protocols but also think on their feet. You showed initiative, intelligence, and discretion. Discretion. I drove to the patient's house and called 911. Yet you didn't tell the 911 operator anything about the hospital or the patient. You didn't go inside. You texted your sister but kept the message vague. The colonel smiled thinly. Yes, we know about that too. I felt a chill at the implications of their surveillance capabilities. The truth is, Dr. Patel continued, we're fighting a losing battle. The initial outbreak in Brazil spread further than we anticipated before containment protocols were implemented. Cases are appearing in major cities across 3 continents now. How many? I asked. Confirmed cases in the thousands. Suspected cases. She shook her head. Many more. Colonel Wheeler cleared his throat. What we're offering you, Nurse Collins, is a position on the front line of this fight, working with patients like SL301, helping us understand the disease, develop treatments. And if I refuse, then you sign some very serious non-disclosure agreements and go back to your regular nursing duties. But you'll be watched closely for the rest of your life. He gestured to Dr. Patel. Or you can join us and make a difference. What about the person? The thing I saw at Oakwood Drive. Contained, the colonel said simply. One of many we're tracking and capturing when possible. I thought about patient SL301, about his clouded eyes and the hunger he described. I thought about the implications of what they were telling me. A global pandemic of something worse than any disease we'd ever encountered. If I accept, I said slowly, I want complete transparency, no more secrets. Dr. Patel and Colonel Wheeler exchanged glances. As much transparency as security allows, the colonel finally said. You'd be part of the team, privy to information on a need-to-know basis. It wasn't everything, but it was something. And perhaps from the inside, I could learn more than they were willing to tell me now. When do I start? I asked. Dr. Patel smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You already have. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've learned more about pathogen X42 than I ever wanted to know. I've watched patients progress through the stages of infection, seen the way it ravages the body, while preserving just enough neurological function to drive the host toward its new purpose, spreading the infection. I've treated dozens of patients on sub-level 3. Most don't survive the full transformation. Those that do are transferred to a more secure facility somewhere in the mountains. I don't ask where. Patient SL301, Dr. Martin Kelly was his name, I later learned, succumbed to the final stage of the disease 2 months after I met him. Before the end, he told me everything he knew about the pathogen's origins. It wasn't a natural evolution. It was engineered, though by whom remains unclear. The public remains largely unaware. Isolated incidents are reported as drug-induced psychosis or violent crime. The CDC issues warnings about a new strain of flu. People get sick, some disappear, life goes on. But for how long? Last week we lost containment on sub-level 3, just briefly. An orderly made a mistake with the airlock protocol. One patient escaped into the main hospital before being contained. He bit 3 people before security brought him down. Those 3 people are now in isolation, showing early symptoms, and I've been assigned as their primary nurse. The cycle continues, the infections spread, and I wonder how long before the system breaks down completely. How long before what's happening in isolated pockets around the world becomes a tide that can't be stopped? I still work the night shift, still take the service elevator down to sub-level 3, still administer Protocol X42 to patients strapped to beds, their skin mottling, their eyes clouding, their hunger growing. But now I watch the shadows more carefully. I listen for shuffling footsteps in empty corridors. I check the news for reports of strange behavior, unexplained violence, because I know what's coming. Patient Zero told me, and the quarantine won't hold forever. When the outbreak reached our county, most folks fled toward the cities, toward the military checkpoints and the promised safety of quarantine zones. We did the opposite. My family, my wife Emma, our 10-year-old son Caleb and I, drove deeper into the countryside, toward my late grandfather's farm at the end of a long dirt road, 10 miles from the nearest neighbor. It was our only option. The news had been showing footage of the quarantine zones for days before the broadcasts stopped, overcrowded, undersupplied, and most importantly, failing to keep the infected out. One breach was all it took, one infected person slipping past the screening process, then turning in the middle of the night, and suddenly thousands of refugees became a feeding ground. The farm had everything we needed: a well for water, solar panels my grandfather had installed years ago, enough preserved food to last months, and most importantly, isolation. The nearest town, Fuller's Creek, with its population of 1,200, was 20 miles away, far enough that we wouldn't have random survivors or infected wandering onto our property. At least that's what we thought. We arrived as the sun was setting, the old farmhouse a silhouette against the darkening sky. Nothing had changed since my last visit for Grandpa's funeral 2 years ago. The 2-story white clapboard house, with its wraparound porch, the red barn behind it, the fields, now overgrown with weeds, the windbreak of pine trees along the north edge of the property. Home sweet home, I said, as I killed the engine. The sudden silence was profound after the constant radio reports and emergency broadcasts we'd been listening to during our 8-hour drive from Chicago. Emma squeezed my hand. It'll do. She was trying to be brave, but I could see the fear behind her eye. She had wanted to go to the quarantine zone in Indianapolis, to be around other people, authorities who supposedly knew what they were doing. It had taken all my powers of persuasion to convince her that isolation was our best bet. Caleb was quiet, had been since we left our apartment that morning. He understood more than we gave him credit for. He'd seen the news before we'd started restricting his media access, had seen footage of the infected people, who weren't quite people anymore. Their skin gray and mottled, eyes clouded and vacant, moving with that distinctive shambling gait, as they pursued anything living with single-minded hunger. Let's get inside before it gets completely dark, I said, reaching for the shotgun I'd placed on the floor of the passenger seat. I wasn't a gun person before this, had never even fired one until a week ago, when reports of the infection started coming out of Los Angeles. But the world had changed, and I had changed with it. The front door key was where it had always been, hidden inside a fake rock in the flower bed. Some things at least remained constant. The house smelled mussy from disuse, but was otherwise just as I remembered. Wood floor, old furniture covered in sheets, family photos on the walls. We'll clean up tomorrow, Emma said, looking around at the dust-covered surfaces. For now, let's just get some light and heat going. I nodded, heading to the breaker box in the kitchen, while Emma and Caleb brought in our essential supplies from the car. The power was still on, the solar system feeding into the local grid, but also providing backup power to the house. Another of my grandfather's paranoid preparations that now seemed prescient. We settled in that first night, eating a simple meal of canned soup warmed on the electric stove, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy for Caleb's sake. I told stories about spending summers here as a kid, exaggerating my childhood adventures to make my son smile. It almost worked. As Emma put Caleb to bed in what used to be my childhood room, I made a circuit of the house, checking doors and windows, drawing curtains, and making sure the shotgun was loaded and accessible, but not where Caleb could reach it. "We're going to be okay here," Emma said, when she came downstairs, finding me sitting at the kitchen table with a hand crank radio, trying to find a broadcast, any broadcast. "I think so," I replied, giving up on the radio after finding nothing but static across all bands. "It's defensible, isolated. We have supplies." She sat across from me, her face pale in the lamplight. "How long do you think we'll need to stay?" I didn't have an answer for her. The infection had spread faster than anyone anticipated. From the first reported cases in Los Angeles 2 weeks ago, to nationwide martial law declarations just days later. The last coherent broadcast we'd heard mentioned outbreaks in every major city in North America. "As long as it takes," I finally said, "until they find a cure, or until the infected die off." Though the reports had been mixed on whether the infected could die from natural causes. Some said they'd witnessed infected with traumatic injuries that would kill a normal person continuing to move, to hunt, to feed. Emma nodded, accepting my non-answer. "I'm going to try to sleep. You should too." But sleep didn't come easily that night. I lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the countryside, the wind in the trees, the occasional animal cry from the distant woods, the creaking of the old house settling. Each sound made me tense, imagining shuffling footsteps on the porch, gray hands scratching at the windows. Morning came without incident. Sunlight streamed through the cracks in the curtains, revealing dust motes dancing in the air. For a moment it was possible to believe that everything was normal, that the world wasn't in the midst of collapse. That illusion shattered when I checked the radio again and found the same empty static across all frequencies. We spent the day settling in, cleaning, taking inventory of supplies, planning for the long term. The pantry was well stocked with preserved foods, home-canned vegetables and fruits, jars of jam, pickles and relishes, bags of rice and beans, flour and sugar. My grandfather had been a child of the Depression and never lost his habit of preparing for hard times. The cellar revealed more treasures, a chest freezer full of wrapped meat, still frozen thanks to the solar power, jugs of water, medical supplies, even a small cabinet of ammunition for the shotgun and the revolver I found in a lockbox under my grandfather's bed. "Your grandfather was quite the prepper," Emma commented as we cataloged our findings. "He always said modern society was hanging by a thread," I replied, remembering my grandfather's lectures about self-sufficiency and the fragility of civilization. Guess he was right. Caleb was fascinated by the farm, exploring the house and the immediate surroundings under our watchful eyes. It was good to see him engaged, asking questions about how things worked, helping with chores. The routine gave us all a sense of purpose. By the end of our first week at the farm, we had established a new normal. Days were spent maintaining the property, tending to the small vegetable garden we'd started, and homeschooling Caleb. Nights were for family time, board games, reading books from my grandfather's extensive library, talking about happy memories from before. We avoided discussing the state of the world beyond our little sanctuary. What good would it do? We had no new information, no way of knowing if things were getting better or worse out there. Then, on our 9th day at the farm, we saw the first signs that the outside world hadn't forgotten us. I was checking the fences along the eastern edge of the property when I spotted them. Footprints in the soft earth near the tree line, clearly human, but with an irregular pattern, as if the person had been dragging one foot. They hadn't been there the day before. My heart hammered in my chest as I followed the tracks with my eyes. They emerged from the woods, crossed the overgrown field, and disappeared into the cornfield that separated the eastern border of our property from the neighboring farm, abandoned years ago when the Mitchell family moved to California. Someone, or something, had been walking on our land. I returned to the house immediately, shotgun held ready, eyes scanning the tree line and fields for movement. "We need to be more careful," I told Emma after sending Caleb upstairs to read. "There are tracks near the east fence, fresh ones." "Infected?" she asked, her face paling. "I don't know, could be a survivor passing through." But the gait was uneven. I didn't need to elaborate. We'd both seen enough footage to know how the infected moved. Emma glanced out the window toward the eastern field. "What do we do?" "We fortify," I said simply. "Board up the ground floor windows. Set up some kind of alarm system around the perimeter. Take shifts watching at night." She nodded, already moving toward the toolbox we'd found in the barn. "I'll help you with the window." We worked through the afternoon, nailing boards across the downstairs windows, leaving just small gaps to see through. I found spools of fishing line in my grandfather's hunting supplies and strung them between trees at the edge of the clearing around the house, attaching empty cans that would rattle if the line was disturbed. That night, I took the first watch, sitting on the porch with the shotgun across my lap, straining my eyes to see into the darkness beyond our makeshift perimeter. Emma would relieve me at 2 a.m. for the second shift. The night was quiet except for the usual sounds of the countryside. No shuffling footsteps, no inhuman moans, just crickets, the occasional hoot of an owl, the rustle of wind through corn stalks. I was about to wake Emma for her shift when I heard it, the faint jingling of cans from the direction of the eastern field. I froze, listening intently, hand tightening on the shotgun. There it was again, more insistent this time. Something had disturbed our alarm system. I moved silently to the edge of the porch, eyes fixed on the point where the sound had come from. The moon provided just enough light to see shadows moving at the edge of the cornfield. 1, 2, 3 distinct figures emerging slowly from between the rows of corn. Even in the dim light, their movement was unmistakable, that awkward jerky gait that had become the signature of the infected. They moved with a terrible purpose, aiming directly toward the house, as if drawn by an unseen force. I raised the shotgun, aiming at the lead figure. The sound would attract attention, possibly draw more infected, but I couldn't let them get closer to the house, to my family. Just as my finger tensed on the trigger, a hand touched my shoulder. I nearly pulled the trigger in surprise. "Don't," Emma whispered. "The noise will only bring more." She was right. I lowered the gun slightly, watching as the infected shambled close. They were about 50 yards away now, close enough to see details in the moonlight. 2 men and a woman, their clothes torn and dirty, skin the sickly gray color we'd seen on the news. The woman was missing an arm below the elbow, the wound not bleeding, but dark and ragged. "What do we do?" I whispered. Emma pointed to the barn. "Get them away from the house. We can lock ourselves in the cellar if needed." It was risky, but she was right. If we could draw them away from the house where Caleb was sleeping, we'd have more options. I handed Emma the revolver. "If anything happens to me, get Caleb and lock yourselves in the cellar. There's enough supplies down there to last weeks." Before she could protest, I slipped off the porch and moved toward the barn, keeping low and trying to stay in the shadows. Once there, I banged the flat of my hand against the metal siding, creating a ringing sound that carried in the night air. The effect was immediate. All 3 infected turned toward the sound, their movements becoming more animated, more purposeful. They changed direction, now shambling directly toward the barn. Toward me. I ducked inside, leaving the door partially open. The barn was filled with old farm equipment, hay bales, and assorted junk that created a maze of potential hiding spots and obstacles. I positioned myself behind an old tractor, shotgun aimed at the door. The infected entered one by one, the first bumping awkwardly against the door frame before stumbling inside. In the confined space, the smell hit me, a sickly sweet odor of rot and something chemical I couldn't identify. It took all my willpower not to gag. They moved slowly, heads swiveling as they searched for the source of the sound. I waited until all 3 were fully inside the barn, then made my move, darting toward the door. The closest infected, the woman missing an arm, reacted with surprising speed, lunging toward me with her remaining hand outstretched. I dodged, but not quite fast enough. Her fingers caught the sleeve of my jacket, pulling me off balance. I stumbled, falling against a stack of empty feed barrels that crashed to the floor with a deafening clatter. The noise sent the infected into a frenzy. All 3 converged on me, moving faster than I'd expected, faster than the news reports had indicated. Trapped on the ground, I raised the shotgun and fired at the nearest one. The woman. The blast caught her in the chest, the force throwing her backward into the other two. But to my horror, although a gaping hole now occupied the space where her sternum had been, she began to rise again, movements jerky but determined. I scrambled to my feet, pumping the shotgun to chamber another round. The second infected, a tall man in what had once been a business suit, was nearly upon me. I fired again, aiming for the head this time. The top of his skull disappeared in a spray of dark matter. He dropped instantly, body suddenly limp and truly lifeless. The woman was still coming, and the third infected, an older man in overalls that marked him as a local farmer, was circling around to my left. I had 4 shells left in the shotgun, and no time to reload from the spare shells in my pocket. I fired at the woman again, this time aiming for her head. The shot connected, and she collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. 3 shells left. The farmer was faster than the others, moving with a lurching run rather than a shamble. He closed the distance before I could aim properly. I backpedaled, tripped over one of the fallen barrels, and went down hard, the shotgun skittering away across the concrete floor. The infected was on me in an instant, his weight pinning me down, his hands unnaturally strong, grasping at my arms, his face lowered toward mine, jaws snapping. The smell was overwhelming, rot and chemicals and something else, something worse. His skin was cold and clammy against mine, as I fought to keep his teeth away from my flesh. A gunshot rang out, deafeningly loud in the confined space of the barn. The infected's head jerked to the side, a dark hole appearing in his temple. His body went instantly limp. Emma stood in the doorway, the revolver still raised, her hands steady despite what she'd just done. "Are you bit?" she asked, voice tight with fear. I pushed the dead weight off me, checking my arms and neck with frantic hands. "No, I don't think so." She helped me up, her eyes never leaving the 3 corpses on the barn floor. "We need to burn them," she said. "Everything I've read says burning is the only way to be sure." We dragged the bodies outside, far from any structures, and built a pyre with fallen branches and hay. As the flames consumed the infected, we stood watching, the firelight casting long shadows across the farm. "There will be more," Emma said quietly. I nodded, knowing she was right. These 3 had found us. Others would too. The isolation that had seemed like our salvation now felt tenuous, our safety an illusion. "We'll be ready," I replied, though I wasn't sure how we could prepare for what might be coming. As we walked back to the house, I noticed Caleb standing on the porch, watching us with wide, scared eyes. He had witnessed everything from the second-floor window. There would be no protecting him from the reality of our situation now. That night changed everything. We became more vigilant, more methodical in our defense of the farm. I dug a trench around the perimeter and filled it with sharpened stakes, a primitive but effective barrier against the mindless infected. We set up a rotation of watch shifts, even training Caleb to sound an alarm if he spotted movement while playing lookout from the second-floor windows during the day. Every few days we would spot infected approaching from the direction of Fuller's Creek. Never more than 4 or 5 at a time, manageable with careful planning and the deadly knowledge that only destruction of the brain would stop them permanently. We developed a system. Emma would draw them toward preset kill zones with sounds or movements, while I would eliminate them from concealed positions with the shotgun. We never used the gun near the house, always leading them away first to minimize noise that might attract more. After each encounter, we would burn the bodies, adding them to a communal pyre we kept smoldering in a clearing east of the farm. The smoke bothered us at first, not just the smell, but what it represented. The people these things had once been. But like everything else in this new world, we adjusted, became desensitized. Weeks passed this way. Our garden grew. We rationed our preserved foods carefully. We maintained the solar panels and collected rainwater to supplement the well. We created a life of sorts, a routine that gave us the illusion of normalcy in a world that had left normal far behind. Then came the day when our delicate balance was shattered. I was tending to the garden when I heard an unfamiliar sound. A vehicle approaching on the long dirt road that led to our farm. Not the shambling footsteps of infected, but the deliberate approach of other survivors. I ran to the house, warning Emma and Caleb, who took up their predetermined positions. Emma with the revolver at the upstairs window covering the front approach. Caleb in the cellar with enough supplies to last if something happened to us. I took the shotgun and positioned myself behind the stack of firewood next to the porch, watching as a battered pickup truck came into view around the bend in the road. The truck stopped about 50 yards from the house, the engine cut off, and for a long moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened, and a man stepped out, his hands raised to show he was unarmed. "Hello?" he called. "We don't mean any harm. We're just looking for shelter, maybe trade some supplies." I stayed hidden, watching as a woman and 2 children emerged from the passenger side of the truck. They looked exhausted but not injured, not infected, just people, like us, trying to survive. "We've been on the road for days," the man continued, "coming from the east. The quarantine zone in Indianapolis was overrun. We barely made it out." At the mention of Indianapolis, my blood ran cold. That was where Emma had wanted to go initially. If we had followed her plan instead of mine. "Please," the woman called out, her voice cracking. "We have children. We just need somewhere safe for the night." I stood up slowly, shotgun pointed at the ground but ready. "Stay where you are," I called back. "Any of you infected? Any bites or scratches?" "No," the man replied immediately. "We're clean. We've been careful." I approached cautiously, keeping a safe distance. Up close I could see the toll their journey had taken. Clothes dirty and worn, faces gaunt with exhaustion and hunger, eyes holding that haunted look I sometimes caught in the mirror. "I'm David," the man said. "This is my wife Karen, our daughter Lily, and our nephew Michael. His parents." He trailed off, the implication clear. "James," I replied, not yet willing to share more information. "How did you find this place?" "We've been following back roads, avoiding towns," David explained. "A man we met a few days back mentioned an old farm out this way, said it might be abandoned, somewhere we could rest." I studied them carefully, looking for signs of deception, signs of infection. They appeared genuinely desperate but honest. "We have food," Karen added. "Not much, but we can share." "David's a doctor, or was. That's got to be worth something these days." A doctor. The word hung in the air between us. Medical knowledge was perhaps the most valuable commodity in this new world. I made a decision, lowering the shotgun completely. "You can stay the night. We'll talk more. Decide about longer arrangements after that." The relief on their faces was palpable. I led them to the barn, cleaned out since our encounter with the infected, and helped them bring in their meager belongings from the truck. That night, after our guests had settled in the barn with blankets and a hot meal, Emma and I discussed the situation in hushed tones in our bedroom. "A doctor could be invaluable," she said, "and they have children. We can't just send them back out there." I nodded, though concerns lingered. More people means more resources consumed, more complexity, and they could bring trouble. Not just infected, but other survivors. Desperate people. We were desperate once, Emma reminded me. Someone helped us. She was referring to the gas station attendant, who had filled our tank when we had no cash. Only a maxed-out credit card that was already worthless as society collapsed around us. "We'll give it a trial period," I decided. "See how it goes." That was 4 months ago. David and his family have become part of our community now. The barn has been converted into a second living space. David's medical knowledge has proven invaluable. He treated Emma's infected cut that could have turned septic, set Michael's broken arm when he fell from a tree, delivered a baby when another group of survivors joined us. 2 months after David arrived, our farm has grown into a settlement of 17 people. We've expanded the garden into a proper field, scavenged seeds from abandoned properties, Even acquired a few chickens and a milk cow through trade with another settlement 10 miles west. We still get infected approaching our perimeter, but less frequently now. David has a theory that they're finally starting to decompose beyond functionality, that there's a natural time limit to how long the infection can animate a dead body. It gives us hope, the possibility that if we can outlast the infected, humanity might have a chance to rebuild. But I worry too. Our success has made us a target. 3 weeks ago we fought off a group of raiders, not infected, but survivors who had chosen a darker path. We lost 2 of our people in that attack. It was a harsh reminder that in this new world, the living can be more dangerous than the dead. Tonight I'm on watch in the guard tower we built at the edge of the property. The moon is full, casting silver light across the field. In the distance I can see the flickering lights of another settlement. New neighbors who arrived last week and established themselves on the old Mitchell property. The world is changing again. Communities forming, trade routes establishing. The first fragile networks of a new society emerging from the ashes of the old. I don't know what the future holds for us here at the farm at the end of the road. I don't know if the infected will ever truly be gone, if a cure will be found for those in the early stages, if the world my son grows up in will bear any resemblance to the one I knew. But I do know this: we have carved out a life here. We have found a way to do more than just survive. We found a way to live, to grow food and raise animals, to teach our children, to form bonds with neighbors, to plan for tomorrow. In the distance I hear the moaning of an infected, a solitary figure shambling along the edge of the wood. Once that sound would have filled me with terror. Now it's just another part of our reality, like the crowing of roosters in the morning, or the rumble of our generator in the evening. I raise my rifle, peer through the scope, and prepare to do what needs to be done, what I've done countless times before. The infected are still a threat, but no longer the only threat. No longer even the main one. The real challenge now is remembering our humanity while surviving in a world that seems determined to strip it away. It's building something worth living for, not just staying alive. As I squeeze the trigger, ending the suffering of whatever poor soul is trapped in that decaying body, I think about Caleb and the other children in our settlement, about the world they'll inherit and what they'll make of it. And despite everything, I feel something I haven't felt since this all began. Hope.
This is Dr. Eliza Chen, epidemiologist with the CDC's Emergency Response Team. I'm starting this audio log to document the outbreak in New Harmon, Pennsylvania. Population 42,000. Or at least it was. We arrived 3 days ago following reports of an unusual illness causing extreme aggression and physical abnormalities in patients. Initial assessment suggests a pathogen unlike anything I've encountered in 15 years with the CDC. The working hypothesis is a prion disease with aspects of rabies, but the transmission rate and symptom progression don't match any known pathology. The local hospital is overwhelmed. Patients showing signs of necrotic tissue while still ambulatory. Extreme aggression, diminished higher brain function, but intact motor control, and hunger. Constant, insatiable hunger. The military established a quarantine perimeter around the city yesterday. No one in or out without level 4 decontamination. They're calling New Harmon a containment zone in official communications, but the soldiers have another name for it: the dead zone. It's not inaccurate. I've seen the infected up close, despite vital signs: pulse, respiration. They present more like corpses than living humans. Skin mottled with patches of necrosis, eyes clouded, movement uncoordinated but purposeful, always moving toward potential prey. FEMA estimates 40% of the population is already infected. Another 35% evacuated before the quarantine was established. The remaining 25% are hiding in homes, businesses, anywhere they think might be safe. They're not wrong to hide. The infected hunt in packs, seemingly drawn to sound and movement. My team has set up a research facility in the local high school. We're working around the clock to identify the pathogen, determine transmission vectors, and develop treatment protocols. But we're flying blind. Nothing in the medical literature describes what we're seeing. This is worse than anything I've worked on before. Worse than the Congo Ebola outbreak worse than the lab accident in Kazakhstan last year. Those pathogens killed, yes, but they didn't turn victims into whatever these are. That's Dr. Patel with our latest lab results. I'll continue this log later. Voice memo Vol.2, 06/12/2024. 11:42 p.m. The lab results confirmed our worst fears. The pathogen attacks the brain in stages. First, it triggers intense fever and delirium. Then, as it colonizes the limbic system, aggression increases while higher cognitive functions deteriorate. Finally, it hijacks the motor cortex, while simultaneously initiating a process analogous to partial cellular necrosis. In simple terms, it's killing its host while keeping them animated and aggressive, perfect for spreading itself further. Transmission occurs through fluid exchange, primarily bites, but potentially any transfer of blood or saliva. We've recorded incubation periods ranging from 6 hours to 48 hours, depending on the location of initial infection and the victim's general health. The military is getting nervous. They've established a secondary quarantine line 10 miles out from the city limits, with orders to shoot anything that crosses the primary perimeter. Can't say I blame them. If this reaches a major population center, the research team is down to 12 people now. Dr. Rivera was bitten while collecting samples yesterday. Protocol dictated immediate isolation and observation. He turned 6 hours later. Captain Wilkins had to put him down. Put him down. Listen to me, using terms like we'd use for rabid animals, but that's what this reduces people to, less than human, driven only by hunger and the biological imperative to spread the infection. I haven't slept in 36 hours. The military cots they've provided are uncomfortable, but that's not why. Every time I close my eyes, I see Dr. Rivera's face as the infection took hold. The way his eyes clouded over. The way his movements became jerky, uncoordinated. The way he looked at us, not as colleagues anymore, but as That's the third time tonight. The perimeter guards engaging infected trying to leave the city. The soldiers say the infected are getting more aggressive, more coordinated in their movements, almost like they're learning. That can't be possible. The brain scans show massive deterioration in the frontal lobe. They shouldn't be capable of learning, of adapting. And yet, more reinforcements arriving. The quarantine zone now has nearly 1,000 military personnel surrounding it, not to protect those still uninfected inside, though that's the official line. No, they're here to make sure nothing gets out. I should try to sleep. Tomorrow we begin live tissue testing to evaluate potential treatments, though treatment may be optimistic. At this point, containment is our primary goal. Voice memo Gen 3, 06/13/24, 4:26 p.m. Breakthrough of sorts. We've identified a potential vulnerability in the pathogen. Under laboratory conditions, exposure to a specific wavelength of ultraviolet light disrupts the protein chains that appear to be responsible for reanimation after cellular death begins. In practical terms, this means we might have a way to neutralize infected individuals without destructive brain trauma. Until now, the only effective method has been direct destruction of the brain stem. The military is already discussing applications. UV floodlights at checkpoints, UV-emitting barriers around safe zones. But there are significant limitations. The exposure time needed is nearly 5 minutes. The infected would need to be restrained somehow, and the effect appears temporary in advanced cases. The pathogen rebuilds its protein structures within hours. Still, it's something more than we had yesterday. The situation in the city continues to deteriorate. We've lost contact with 3 of the 5 remaining civilian shelters. The hospital fell last night when their generator failed. plunging the isolation ward into darkness. Over 60 infected escaped into the general population. The military had to put down everyone inside, infected and medical personnel alike. Put down. There's that term again. Dr. Chen, we need you in the lab now. One of the test subjects is showing unusual behavior. I have to go. Voice memo Gen 4, 06-14-20 Thor. 1:13 a.m. I can't process what I just saw. What it means for our understanding of the infection. Test subject 23. Formerly Gary Winters. High school chemistry teacher has been infected for approximately 72 hours. Advanced necrosis present in extremities. No detectable higher brain function in previous EEG scans. Classic presentation of stage 3 infection. But tonight he did something impossible. He used a tool. We had secured him to the examination table with standard restraints. Apparently the right wrist restraint had a manufacturing defect. A weakened point in the leather where it connects to the buckle. After hours of pulling against it with the mindless persistence these infected exhibit, the restraint tore partially, rather than continuing to pull until it ripped completely. Subject 23 reached over with his other hand, still securely restrained, and used his fingernails to pry at the weakened point, working methodically until the restraint failed completely. Then, with his free hand, he unfastened the restraint on his other wrist. The process took nearly 20 minutes of focused effort. He was halfway through unfastening the ankle restraint when Dr. Patel discovered him during a routine check. She sounded the alarm, and security personnel neutralized the subject before he could free himself completely. This shouldn't be possible. Everything we know about the pathophysiology of the infection indicates severe deterioration of the cerebral cortex, the area responsible for problem-solving and complex thought. Subject 23 should not have been capable of recognizing the tactical advantage of using his fingernails as tools, nor of understanding the buckle mechanism on the restraints. Either our understanding of how the pathogen affects the brain is fundamentally flawed. I can barely bring myself to consider the alternative, that the pathogen isn't just hijacking motor function, but is itself capable of rudimentary problem solving. That what we're seeing isn't just reanimated humans, but humans being piloted by something else, something that learns. I've ordered comprehensive tissue samples from Subject 23's brain. We need to understand what was happening in there. The military liaison, Colonel Briggs, is pressuring me to keep this incident out of my official reports. He's concerned about panic if word gets out that the infected are displaying adaptive behaviors. He may have a point, but science doesn't advance through concealment. We need to understand what we're facing, even if the truth is more terrifying than we imagined. That's the third explosion tonight. The infected have been congregating around the eastern perimeter. The military is using targeted ordnance to disperse them, but they keep coming back, in larger numbers each time, almost like they're testing the defenses, looking for weaknesses. No, I'm anthropomorphized. They can't be planning or coordinating. The pathogen doesn't work that way.
The official explanation is equipment failure due to power fluctuations, but I saw the communications officer's face when Colonel Briggs pulled him aside. Something's happening beyond the quarantine zone that they don't want us to know about. I've heard rumors from the enlisted personnel, whispers about containment failures in neighboring counties, about similar outbreaks being reported in Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, even as far as Columbus, Ohio. If true, it means our quarantine failed. Or worse, this was never the only outbreak site. The military presence has doubled overnight. More concerning, they've repositioned. Less focus on keeping the infected in, more on establishing a defensive perimeter around our research facility. As if protecting our work has become more important than containing the spread. I've demanded answers from Colonel Briggs, but he's stonewalling me. Says it's need to know, and apparently, I don't need to know. I'm only the lead epidemiologist, trying to understand and stop this pathogen. What could I possibly need to know? That's the third transport helicopter today. They're evacuating non-essential military personnel. Not a good sign. Voice memo, Gen 6, 06-15-2024.
6:38 p.m. The situation has deteriorated significantly. One of our guards admitted that the eastern seaboard is experiencing multiple outbreak zones. Boston, New York, Washington, D.C. all under quarantine now, with varying degrees of success. Patient 0 remains identified. Our working theory had been that New Harmon was the origin point. Perhaps a local exposure to contaminated meat or a mutation of an existing pathogen in the water supply. But if outbreaks are occurring simultaneously across the eastern United States, that suggests either multiple points of origin or a coordinated release. I can't even process the implications of the latter possibility. The tissue samples from Subject 23's brain yielded disturbing results. The frontal cortex shows expected deterioration. But we've discovered unusual activity in the cerebellum and brainstem, almost like the pathogen is rewiring the most primitive parts of the brain, while allowing the higher functions to decay. That would explain the preservation of motor skills and the emergence of problem-solving behaviors. They're not coming from the human host's intellect, but from something more fundamental, more instinctual. The pathogen seems to be creating a new neural network using the host's brain as substrate. Put simply, it's not just killing people and animating their corpses, it's rebuilding them from the inside out. Something's happening. I'll continue this later. Voice memo. 06/15/2024. 2 hours ago, a group of infected breached the gymnasium where we've been housing test subjects. Initial assessment suggests an organized attack. They targeted the power generators first, then the security station. In the darkness and confusion, they overwhelmed our guards and released the contained subjects. 47 infected now roaming the school. We've barricaded ourselves in the science wing, but it's only a matter of time. The military is initiating Protocol Scorched Earth at dawn. They wouldn't tell me what that means, but I can guess. They're going to sterilize the area, us included. I've downloaded all our research data onto portable drives. If anyone finds these recordings, the drives should be with them. The data suggests a potential treatment protocol, not a cure, but something that might prevent the final stage of infection if administered early enough. It's all theoretical, untested, but it's something. They're at the barricades. I can hear them coordinating, working together to find weak points in our defenses. This level of organization shouldn't be possible. It's as if they're being directed, like a hive mind has emerged. They've broken through the chemistry lab windows. We don't have much time. Voice memo. 06/16/2024. 2:14 a.m. I'm alone now. Dr. Patel and the others, they didn't make it. I'm recording this from inside a storage closet off the main hallway. I can hear them moving outside, searching methodically room by room. I've been bitten. Left forearm. Deep tissue penetration. Based on our research, I have perhaps 4-6 hours before symptoms manifest. I've self-administered the experimental treatment protocol. A cocktail of antivirals, immunosuppressants and targeted neural inhibitor. It won't stop the infection, but it might slow the progression, might preserve more of my higher brain functions. I need to document this, for science, for whoever comes after. The first sign will be elevated temperature, followed by tremors in the extremities. Then will come the hunger, an overwhelming, irresistible hunger. After that, progressive loss of higher cognitive functions. I've secured the door as best I could, and swallowed enough sedatives to ensure I won't leave this room once the transformation begins. Better to die human than live as one of them. They know I'm here. They're not trying to break down the door yet. Just waiting, like they know the infection will do their work for them. My temperature is under 1, tremors beginning in my fingers. I'm afraid, not of dying, of becoming one of losing myself while something else wears my body like a suit. If anyone finds these recordings, please tell my sister in Berkeley that I love her. Tell her I fought until the end, and tell whoever's in charge that these things aren't just mindless infected. They're evolving, adapting. The pathogen is creating something new, something worse than zombies. Worse than any horror movie monster. Because they remember. Part of them remembers who they were. Subject 23 was a chemistry teacher. He knew how buckles worked. He knew how to use tool. Whatever intelligence drives them now, it uses the memories and skills of the host. It learns from every person it takes. I'm sending these files now, broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. The treatment protocol is enclosed. It's not much, but it's all we have. My temperature is The hunger is starting. This is Dr. Eliza Chen, CDC Emergency Response Team. If you're hearing this, you're alive. Stay that way. Find the others. There has to be a way to stop this. There has to be. They're getting impatient, or maybe they can sense the change in me. I don't have much time. Remember us. Remember what happened here. And whatever you do, don't let them. Sound cuts off. Voice memos on 9/06/16/2024. 5:38 a.m. Still here. Treatment working. Partially. Infection progressing slower. Cognition impaired but present. They're outside, waiting. They know I'm different, can sense it. Military. Bombs. Soon. Protocol. Scorched earth. Need to preserve data. Need to understand why I'm different. The treatment altered something. Hunger. Overwhelming. But still, me still, human. For now. If found, blood samples, brain tissue, study the difference. Key to fighting back. They're communicating. Outside the door. Not voices, something else, like pressure in my head, trying to reach me, won't let them in, mind or body. Time's up. Remember, New Harmon, patient, 0, not accident, purpose. Fine, who did this? Stop them, still, human, still.